Hi, I'm Jeff Stoodt, and welcome to a special edition of You've Got to Have Art. Our guest this evening is Jeremy Lyons. Jeremy Lyons grew up in Ithaca, New York. In his early 20s, he moved to New Orleans, starting first as a busker and then playing in different bands. It was there, over the course of 13 years, that he was steeped in the rich variety of music that he plays, including the New Orleans Swamp Blues, Southern picking with a slide guitar, Zydeco and Cajun music. And he undoubtedly, during this time, honed his skills on the many instruments that he plays also. In addition to the Jew's harp that we're going to hear, he plays the slide guitar, a two-string bass guitar, a banjo, and a ukulele. Now, presently, Jeremy lives in Cambridge, and in addition to continuing to play with bands such as the Delta Billy Boys, he has partnered with former members of the Boston-based alt-rock band Morphine to form a group called the Ever-Expanding Elastic Waistband. Now that's W-A-S-T-E, okay? Also, since moving east, he has established himself as a children's musician. He's released 2 collections of children's music, 2009's Delta Silly and 2011's Silly Goose Music. Jeremy Lyons will be playing a family show at the Milton Arts Center on Saturday, March the 30th at 4 p.m. I'm happy that he's agreed to talk to me about his music and career before the show. Welcome to You've Got to Have Art, Jeremy. And tell me, why do you enjoy playing music for children?
Well, should I take the microphone? I enjoy playing for children for a number of reasons. It's an opportunity to play music that I think of as the roots of all of the music I play, which is a roots folk music of America. It's an opportunity to play acoustic music, which is what I used to do mostly when I played on the street in New Orleans. And I find that children make a wonderful audience. I've worked in a number of different kinds of venues over the last 25 years, including festivals and concerts, but also a lot of nightclubs and bar rooms. And those can be a lot of fun, but it can be tiring playing late at night. And also, one gets somewhat tired of performing for people who are under the influence of alcohol. So it's kind of fun to play in the daytime, to play music for people, young people who, even though I may be playing songs that are 100, 150 or more years old, some of these children have never heard them before, and they're hearing them for the first time, things like Oh, Susanna and You Are My Sunshine and older songs. And it's a really wonderful feeling to introduce that music to young people for the first time. And I find that children sometimes are the best behaved audiences that I have. Some of them. I mean, this is in New England. I found that there's a lot of venues where I can perform in front of a group of people who are listening to the words of a song, and that's a real special thing. But a lot of times people are socializing or what have you. Well, kids will give you their undivided attention, and every little thing that I do, they pick up on, to the point where it's made me a better performer in general, because I have to realize that every move that I make, everything I wear, every word I say is absorbed by these young people. So I have to be much more self-conscious. And also I find children to be a wonderfully inspiring group of people. They're open-minded and they're funny. And actually sometimes they behave a lot like drunk people too. They're wobbling around, they fall over, sometimes they throw up and things like that. So, but a lot of times the kids are better behaved than the parents are in the audience, so it's fun.
Good. Now, your mission statement on your website says that you recycle culture, and so you pass on the traditions of the music that as you said. Could be a century old even, if not older. Now, how do you know? What is that moment when you feel like you're succeeding with your mission? Uh-oh, I gave you something to think about there.
Well, That's a good question. I think it's an ongoing process. You know, part of the idea of recycling culture is that rather than trying to reproduce a song note for note or reproduce the arrangements exactly of say a Chicago blues tune from the 1950s or you know, a surf guitar tune from the 60s or a banjo song from the Civil War. One brings everything that you've learned to the table. You can't ignore the fact that you're influenced by all the music you grew up with. You know, so I have influences that range from very early folk music to, you know, contemporary jazz, 60s and 70s rock, and so on. I think, but the moment that I know that I'm successful is just when you're making a connection with an audience and enjoying yourself, and that's really what it's all about.
There must be something, considering that our culture is, this music is a part of our culture. It must be kind of neat to see kids like respond to it immediately, like "Oh Susanna" or these traditional songs. You know, there's something really solid there, that even though they've never heard it before, it's almost like it's in the air somewhere, and you're just bringing it to them. That's got to be a great feeling.
It is, and you know, there are songs that sometimes I'll start playing something like I've been working on the railroad, and a lot of the kids have heard that before through I don't know, other musicians or television. It's just or their parents sing it, and these are songs that weren't designed to be children's songs, but have become that just because they're songs that everybody grew up with and that have been passed down for whatever reason. They're just good tunes. They're catchy, but it's great to pass that along.
So, as I said earlier, you've got your Jews harp here, and I was wondering if you could play us a little something that you might play the kids on Saturday, March the 30th at the Milton Arts Center. You have anything you could play?
Yeah, I've well, first I'll just do a demonstration of the Jews harp, and then maybe I'll do a little a cappella song after that.
Yeah. Could you first just tell us a little bit about the Jews harp?
Okay. So this is commonly known as the Jews harp, and the name of the instrument is somewhat curious. Some people think that the term Jews harp comes from jaw harp, the jaw harp. So that's what a lot of people call it these days. There's no connection between these instruments and the Jewish people per se. Some people also say it might be originally be a juice harp because you're using your mouth, and there's a lot of juice in there that, especially after you play it for a while, a lot of it is produced. It's actually one of the oldest instruments that exists. The ones that we're familiar with in the United States are made out of metal usually, but if you go to Southeast Asia, you'll find them made out of bamboo or other materials. In parts of Asia, they have metal ones, but they have ones with more than one prong, so you can get different notes. But it's an unusual instrument. You basically pluck on this reed. It's a metal reed in this case. And it doesn't sound like much by itself, but when you put it up to your mouth and hold it in a certain way, you use your mouth to create a tone, and you change the shape of your mouth just as you would with vowel sounds to change the tone. So I'm going to give you an example. Wait, it's a little bendy there. So I'll start with an O sound, and I'll go to an E shape that I'm with my mouth. It's a little technical difficulty. And if I go back and forth, a lot of people associate this sound, they know the sound from cartoons and stuff like that. A little frog jumping around. But you can make music out of it.
That was great. Were you just improvising there, or was that a melody of some sort?
It's just improvisation.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's wonderful. So, you grew up in Ithaca, New York, and who were your favorite performers when you were young?
Well, my parents were sort of old folkies from the 50s on, and so I grew up around with a lot of Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie and Arlo Guthrie and stuff like that. So when I was a kid, I was listening to a lot of that. We also listened to a fair amount of classical music and other folk blues. We also listened to folk blues artists like Leadbelly, Josh White, and stuff like that. And then when I got older, I got into rock and roll and stuff like that, and then went backwards through the old blues and Appalachian music.
So how old were you when you first started playing the guitar or any musical instrument?
I mean, when I was a kid, I played a little bit of piano, a little bit of recorder, just taking lessons. But then I started playing guitar when I was 14 or 15, just picking it up from friends helping me. My dad had a guitar in the closet, and he said I could have it, and so I just started playing on that and learning some chords and stuff from friends. And then I just went on from there. For the next 4 or 5 years, I was just self-taught, and then eventually started using my fingers, getting a little more nimble, and took some lessons from a talented guitar player from England named Martin Simpson, who's a phenomenal guitar player.
Now, Ithaca is a college town, of course, and so there were probably a lot of great performers passing through, right? What were some memorable performances that you heard while you were living there?
Well, yeah, there were some blues performers I saw that came through, just small places. Jerry Portnoy from this area is a harmonica player who was in Muddy Waters band. In the 70s and 80s, and he came through with Pine Top Perkins, who was a blues piano player from Chicago and Mississippi, and he was also in Muddy's band, so I saw them play. Paul Jeremiah was a fantastic guitar player, blues and folk guitar player, who's actually, I think, from Providence, Rhode Island, and was part of the sort of Cambridge folk scene in the 60s, and I saw him play a number of times. There were a lot of local bands that were really good. There was a group called the Horseflies from around the Ithaca area who mixed Appalachian old-timey music with contemporary beats and stuff, and sort of new wave arrangements. So I was up for anything really. So I got to hear a lot. I went to college at Hampshire College in Amherst, Mass, and then I got to see a lot more music there. David Bromberg. I went to the Iron Horse Cafe a lot, the Iron Horse Music Hall a lot. I saw Buddy Guy. Actually, I saw Buddy Guy play in Ithaca when I was about 17 or 18 in a very small club, and that was great. And Coco Taylor at the Iron Horse, I remember seeing Junior Wells play. So it was kind of, I mean, after college, I moved to New Mexico for a little while. I saw Albert Collins play. A lot of blues musicians who have since passed. 20 years ago, they were still touring, and I was able to see them, and that was great.
So you moved to New Orleans in 1992. Why New Orleans?
Well, I had passed through New Orleans a couple times before that, and was enthralled with the culture. It's a very different place than where I grew up. The architecture, the food, the way the light is in the air. The weather, I was just enthralled. And also, I knew a little bit about the history, and I knew that there was a lot of music, more music in New Orleans, I think, than anywhere else in the United States. So, there's Cajun, Zydeco blues, country music, rock music, a number of different kinds of rhythm and blues music. I mean,
this is the thing that I find kind of bold about you moving to New Orleans. You're in your early 20s, and you're playing on the street there. In my imagination, I see you running into very experienced musicians that probably have a lot of advice to offer. Did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, some advice. I mean, mostly I learned by example. Excuse me. I think the dust down here is starting to get at me. I learned from I joined a band on the street. It was a number of musicians who were very talented. Some of them were my age, but some of them were older, and had been around for a while. So some amazing singers, amazing guitar players, and other harmonica, washboard, bass, sometimes drums, saxophones. It was a group that changed membership frequently. Very talented group of people, and a very large pool of songs between us. So I learned a lot, and would play 5 or 6 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week for the first couple of years. And then I started moving into clubs, and I did have contact with great musicians like Snooks Eaglin and Eddie Bo. And I mean, there were lots and lots. There were so many musicians who I didn't see, who I wish I had, who have since passed. But there was also a wonderful local radio station. WWOZ is a community station, and some world-class artists would go on air regularly. Danny Barker. I mean, there's the Rebirth Brass Band and the Dirty Dozen Brass Band. There's scores of them, and actually, there was times when I had the opportunity to perform in festivals in Switzerland, where they would bring other Louisiana artists, and in some ways, I had more contact with a diverse group of musicians from Louisiana when I was in a foreign country, because we sort of stuck together, and I really can't express how much I learned in the time that I lived there, and also since leaving New Orleans, I've learned a lot more about the history of Louisiana in relation to the rest of the country, and there's an endless. You just can't really get to the end of it. There's just so many different levels.
So, Jeremy, you call your music Delta Billy. Now explain that.
Okay, well, the short answer is Delta Billy is a combination of the terms Delta Blues and Rockabilly, or Hillbilly. You can choose. Rockabilly is basically a term that's been used to describe white rock and roll from the 1950s, or contemporary retro rock and roll. But it wasn't used at the time in the 50s. They just called it rock and roll. But if you think about rockabilly, in the 1950s, you had black rhythm and blues, and blues coming from, in Memphis and Mississippi and in the surrounding areas. You had bluegrass, which was a fairly new form of Appalachian music from the 40s. You had other forms of hillbilly music and country music, and all getting mixed up together. And so somebody like Elvis Presley or Carl Perkins or Jerry Lee Lewis were performing a style of rock and roll that was influenced by country music, as was Chuck Berry as well, and he's a black musician. So when I was performing on the streets, I was trying to perform traditional Delta blues, Piedmont blues, which is East Coast blues from Georgia and the Carolinas and stuff like that, and other things like that. Heart tunes from Harlem from the 20s and 30s, old country music by Jimmy Rogers and so on, Hank Williams. Once I moved into the clubs and started playing with a little trio with plugged in with an electric guitar, and had a stand-up bass player, a bass fiddle player, and a drummer. And I have a finger style picking thing with it. I play, I use 3 or 4 fingers and play kind of a fast style, which is associated both with country blues and also with Merle Travis and old country music. But in that context, plugged in like that, and trying to play sort of a high energy mix for the barroom scene, it started to sound a little more like rock and roll, but early rock and roll. But I was playing slide guitar, which is a Delta blues or old blues instrument. And so mixing them together, I came up with this idea of Delta Billy. Also trying to get away from this idea of just the sort of cliched old blues, the same old lump-de-dump-de-dump-de-dump, like the beat that everybody plays. I'm never satisfied. If you're playing 6 gigs a week, you don't want to play the same grooves all night long. So you have to mix it up a little bit. There's several different ways you can present the blues. So Delta Billy was just, it's like, okay, you can put your own stamp on something sonically, but people will put you in a category unless you just preempt them and decide to define it yourself. So that's just really just a marketing tool, a way of trying to get across a little bit of the flavor of what we're doing without people having to hear it.
Well, I am looking forward to your appearance at the Milton Arts Center, and thank you for being a guest on my show.
Thank you. See you there.